Hi everyone, welcome to the Friday Focus, where today we'll talk about Kansas football and its matchup with number 12, the Baylor Bears. I'm Stella Liang, and I'm joined by my fellow UDK football writers, Dan Harmson and Shane Jackson. First off, happy Halloween, guys.
Happy Halloween, Stella.
Happy Halloween. And notice she didn't say experts. She's already off to a better start than you.
Yeah, I figured Shane would correct me on that one. All right, first let's start off by refreshing everyone on the last game. 2 weeks ago, Kansas lost to Texas Tech on the road 21-34. Dan, in the third quarter, Kansas outscored Texas Tech 14-10. What impressed you most about the Jayhawks in that loss?
Well, they had some long drives, and that's been an issue this year for Kansas. Oftentimes when they score, it's on the big plays because they haven't been able to establish, drives that go the length of the field. So seeing Cummings do that, they were able to run the ball a little bit in the second half. Biggest drawback was the fact that Nigel King dropped a couple passes early that could have really impacted the game, and then they had a possible pick six too.
All right, so Shane, on the other side of the ball, outside of Ben Heaney, the defense looked kind of shaky there. What do you think happened?
Yeah, well, I'm no defensive expert like you, Stella, but I agree. The defense did look kind of shaky outside of Ben Heaney. Ben Heaney kind of just really took it to himself to really shine in that game with 21 tackles. But this has kind of been the story all year. They haven't been able to sustain their defensive effort all through an entire four quarters. They only give up 16 points a game, but they'll have a quarter in there where they give up 20 points, and that has been the Achilles heel for this team is they cannot sustain it for four quarters. Part of that has to do with the offense that Dan was just talking about because it puts them in bad position. But it doesn't get any better this week because they're going against one of the best offenses in the country.
Like you said, the defense is going to have to play for four quarters if they have any chance of stopping that Baylor offense. Baylor is averaging 579 yards per game, which is first in the nation. And they're also averaging 49 points per game. So, Dan, what can we expect to see from Baylor?
Yeah, Bryce Petty, you talked about Robert Griffin being a Heisman caliber quarterback. I mean, he won it in 2011, his senior year. And everybody, when he graduated, they were like, okay, Baylor's going to take a step back. I would say that Baylor's taken 2 steps forward. Since 2011, Baylor has been in the top 2 in total offense. And the biggest thing for me is they can play defense better than almost anybody in the Big 12. They're up there with K-State. They're first in total defense. So, I mean, Kansas is going to have to match scores. That's the recipe to beat Baylor. I mean, as you saw, TCU almost did it, but they still didn't have enough. That's my biggest concern is Kansas's offense and not as much the Baylor offense this week.
Shane, who on Baylor do you see giving Kansas the biggest threat?
As you mentioned, this offense is really good, and it scores the second most points in the country with 49 points a game, just behind just TCU. I hate to cop out here, but I have to agree, it's Bryce Petty because he gets everybody else involved. Because this offense is so good, you have to watch out for the player who touches the ball every snap. And Bryce Petty has thrown for nearly 2,000 yards, has 17 touchdowns through the air. He, like Dana said, he is a machine. He's a Heisman candidate, and he's the reason why Baylor's offense is really good, and they have not taken a step back at all since the loss of RG3. It kind of is a cop-out by focusing on the quarterback, but really the offense runs through him.
So you guys mentioned how good that Baylor offense really is. So Dan, how can the Kansas defense match up with Baylor?
It's probably going to have to start with the pass rush because, like any team, you have to get pressure on the quarterback. Bryce Petty, he's a surgeon as far as just making plays. He has great targets to go to, and Shock Linwood, their running backs, averaging 5 yards per carry. So it's going to be a very tall task, a scary task, sticking with the Halloween theme.
Ooh.
So, but yeah, I think it's going to have to start with Kansas getting pressure on Bryce Petty.
On the offensive side, Shane, Michael Cummings has really improved the last few games. Last game, he threw for 2 touchdowns. He ran for another. Do you see him continuing to improve?
I absolutely do. Here's a quick stat for you, though. Cummings has thrown for 594 yards, and Kozart threw for 693. Kozart had 5 starts, Cummings had 2. So you can already see the tremendous strides they've had with Cummings at the helm. I expect him to do very well against this Baylor defense, who isn't spectacular by any means. I mean, the offense does overshadow this defense, so they are a bit underrated. But this defense still gives up over 200 yards through the air. They're known for their rushing defense, which has only allowed 10 rushing touchdowns all year. Mm-hmm. So I think you can really take advantage of the air through the air against this Baylor defense. And I think for that reason alone, Cummings is going to have a pretty good day on Saturday.
All right, guys, a couple quick games right here. We're going to play over-under. Jimmy Mundine has been Cummings' biggest target these last few games. Do you think he gets 6 catches, more or less?
I think Baylor's going to get an early lead here, and Kansas is going to be forced to throw the football, which could help Mundine's chance to get that 6 receptions, which I think he's going to do because he's been, as you've been saying, he's been really effective in short intermediate routes, and I think that's the check down receiver you want if they're going to be seeing the blitz from Baylor.
I'm going to say less just because I think it's going to be 5 or 6. I agree. The tight end has really opened up with Cummings at the helm because they're kind of a game plan situation for them, but I don't think you're going to throw to him 7 or 8 times on Saturday. I don't think it's going to happen. I think KU is going to struggle on Saturday. But if he needs to spread the ball around, so I think other guys are going to get involved.
All right, guys. Ben Heaney had a career-high 21 tackles, which is also the most by any Big 12 player this season. Do you think he keeps it up? Do you think he gets more than, let's say, 12?
I think so. With teams that can stop the run, a lot of times the defensive tackles can make some tackles because they, by pressuring in the backfield. But I think Ben Heaney's going to have to clean up a lot of the mess that goes up front. So I think he's going to be very busy on Saturday. So I'm going to say over on 12.
I'm also going to say over on 12 as well. I mean, he is top 5 in the nation in solo tackles alone. So I believe he's going to get more than 12 tackles on Saturday.
All right, this next question might anger some Kansas fans out there. But, Baylor is known for scoring a lot of points and scoring them really fast. So do you think that Baylor will beat Kansas by 35 points or more?
Like I said earlier, I think it all depends on how much Kansas can score on Saturday. You look at TCU put up 82 points last week. Kansas so far, aside from Southeastern Missouri, against those 6 opponents, they scored 82 points. So it's a pretty alarming stat, and I know that 82 points is not going to be the expectation for most Big 12 teams, but Baylor, they're averaging 50, 60 points a game. So 35, you subtract that from 60, KU's going to have to score at least 25 points, which they've only done, I think, 3 times this year, 2 times this year. So I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Baylor's going to win by over 35 points.
I also think it's going to be by over 35 points. I still think this offense still needs room for improvement, and this defense, as we just talked about earlier, cannot sustain the success for 4 quarters, but they haven't played an offense like Baylor. I think Baylor's really going to take advantage of them. And we're going to give our score predictions in a minute, but I definitely think it's by more than 35 points.
All right, you transitioned that perfectly, Shane.
That's what I do.
All right, it's prediction time, your favorite time of the show. Dan, what do you think is going to happen?
This is just not a good matchup for Kansas. I've got Baylor winning 59-21. Bryce Petty, he's just going to be too much, and the Kansas offense is still struggling to get things going over the course of 4 quarters. As you mentioned, they had that 3rd quarter where they had some drives going, but drop passes, the running game getting stuffed on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 situations. They got to clear that up if they want to take that next step in the Big 12.
I'm going to say it's 45-6 Baylor. I think they're going to get up by enough that you're going to start seeing some reserves come in, and where I think their offense does take a little step back when they get in. So they don't score quite as much. They don't get 50 or 60 because they don't need their offense out there throughout the entire game.
I'm going to agree with you guys. My prediction is that Baylor will win 42-17. Baylor's at home where they're almost unbeatable. They're coming off their first loss of the season, so they're looking for a victory. So I also think that Baylor's going to win. All right, thank you guys for watching the Friday Focus. Baylor takes on Kansas at 3 p.m. tomorrow, and thank you for watching.